You're listening to the Fanalist Podcast. Follow on Twitter at TheFanalystPod.
Welcome to the Fanalist Podcast. I'm Andrew with Tyson and Jayden joining me on Monday, June 13th. The sports world is in the eye of a hurricane right now with so much going on. It's pulling you in each and every direction. A Stanley Cup champion was crowned yesterday. An NBA champ could be crowned later this evening. And also at the end of this week, a US Open champion will be named. Jayden, Tyson, what are you guys most looking forward to throughout this week?
Probably the NBA Finals tonight. I'm so excited to see if the Warriors can actually pull it out against the Cavs. I'm pulling for the Warriors. I'm wearing all my Warriors gear today. Well, one, because I'm a Warriors fan, and two, just to bug Tyson.
I agree. The NBA Finals are probably the highest on my priority list at the moment. But as the week progresses, you have an awesome golf event, the US Open, second major of the year. Been looking forward to that for a very long time. And also a big MMA card as well.
Make sure you follow us on Twitter at TheFanalystPod, subscribe to our channel on YouTube, and like our page on Facebook. Of course, we can't forget Brooke Henderson making not just Canadian women's golf history, but international golf history. So shout out to Brooke Henderson of Smith Falls for becoming the youngest female major PGA winner of all time and the first Canadian to do that since the 60s. She's won her first of what is hopefully going to be many major events. The composure she played with in that playoff was reason enough to fall in love with Brooke and her confident style of play. I'm looking forward to her future. Hopefully she can continue the success and follow it up shortly.
Yeah, honestly, I've seen some of her highlights, and it was just amazing how she took command of that tournament, won it. And I saw that 90-foot putt that she had from the fairway, and I've never seen anything like it.
It's amazing to see such a young athlete succeed like that. The LPGA Tour has kind of been this young athlete, I guess, driven organization, and to see her be the latest one to come up from that is pretty special.
Just like the PGA Tour right now, there's just so many young players that have been dominating the game and playing really, really well. And, Brooke, she did this while beating the game's best. Lydia Ko was seeking her third straight major, and Brooke really just shut the door when she hit that approach on the playoff. I honestly thought Lydia was going to find a way to win this, maybe getting a stroke somewhere on the 17th or 18th. But Brooke's 4-under back nine was just too much for Ko, and it really would be great to see if these two can maybe play together in a pairing at the Women's US Open in July. Now, we mentioned how much is going on in the world of sports, but we would be wrong to, start things up any other way than discuss the Stanley Cup final. The Pittsburgh Penguins won their fourth franchise Stanley Cup last night. It just goes to show, how many things have to go right in order to win a cup, or any championship in that matter. We continually talk about teams and what they need to add and remove from their roster. We all put on our GM hats, right? You guys know we put on our GM hats and we try and make decisions. How do you make the decision to have your rookie goaltender, Matt Murray, stand on his head and win 15 playoff games for you? That's the most rookie goalie wins, tied with Ward, Waugh, Hextall, and Dryden.
It's an impressive list, I must say.
And after all that, the league gave the Conn Smythe Trophy to Sidney Crosby. He was fourth on my list of players who should win that award.
I agree. He was probably third or fourth on mine. I had Matt Murray, number one, number two, Kessel, number three, Letang. But I could see Crosby maybe leapfrogging Kessel and Letang just because he has been such a great leader for the team. If you talk to any guy in the locker room, they will say that this man is the reason why we made it this far in terms of leadership. He's such an amazing player, both on and off the ice. So I don't have really a huge issue with him winning it, but when you look at Matt Murray and what he's accomplished, the rookie goalie that he is, winning the Stanley Cup, it's hard to sort of ignore that incredible performance.
Yeah, well, I think that Sidney Crosby did deserve it, and for many reasons. He made a lot of in-game decisions that the camera didn't pick up on. Some of them they did, some of them they didn't. He was an absolute beast out there. He was more physical than we've ever seen him in his career. Usually he's known for a pretty boy, doesn't like to fight, doesn't like to be aggressive, but we did see him go at it with Joe Thornton many of times, especially in the start of last night's game. And I was just impressed with him overall, and I do think he deserved the Conn Smythe Trophy.
And he may not have been producing in goals, But like you said, physical play, just being in every play as best as he possibly could. I mean, that was what really showed with him.
You could really tell that he wanted to win that game in San Jose that night. He didn't want it to go back to Pittsburgh for Game 7. He was really grinding to make it a Stanley Cup night to remember.
But here's the thing. All these analysts are saying how Crosby was always doing the right thing on the ice. He had, such great input here and there. And I watched the games. Some of the games I wasn't watching because I was just so caught up in what was going on in the NBA, watching some Blue Jays. There was some stuff I missed, but nothing too spectacular, okay? Sidney Crosby played great. But in basketball, you don't win MVP for setting the best picks and stealing passes. In the NFL, you don't win MVP for protecting your quarterback. In baseball, you don't win MVP for throwing 3 innings of relief with 6 strikeouts. You win an MVP when you're the most valuable player. A goaltender who wins 15 games with a goal against average just over 2, he let in a few soft goals that people were really holding against him. But if you're going to hold that against him, give it to the stroke survivor who played 30 minutes a night and scored the game winner.
Well, I honestly think that Murray did play well. But I think it was a recap of last year or 2 years ago's Andrew Hammond. He played well down the stretch. He did really well. But overall, he did let in some softies. And I do think that the spotlight was more on Sidney Crosby and what he's been able to do to bring this team to a Stanley Cup.
Look who Matt Murray was able to beat, okay? Who'd they start with? The Rangers. Then they went to the Capitals, the Tampa Bay Lightning, and then they finished off the San Jose Sharks. Matt Murray is a rookie goaltender. What Andrew Hammond did last season was great. He had a historic stretch in the regular season. This is the playoffs. Matt Murray was there every game. He let in a few softies. Okay, every goalie does, but he was spectacular. He was a great goaltender, and he really did deserve it. And then, everyone's complaining about that one. A lot of people don't want to give Letang credit as well. Okay, give it to the guy who scored the most goals, 10, led the team in points, 22, and took advantage of the power play opportunities, 5 goals, 6 assists, 11 points. How about Phil Kessel? Phil the Thrill.
All I'm saying is that when you look at his performances, they were great, but the most saves he had in the series was 23.
But you agree with me. You said you had Sidney Crosby a little bit lower on your list. I can
see why the league made the choice, though. That's what I'm saying.
I think the NHL just cheaped out here. I think they just went with the easy decision. If we pick Sidney Crosby, no one will give us any flack. It's the easy decision to make. He's the golden boy. Stop giving us this golden boy crap, golden goal. Okay? You have to make big plays when they matter most. Letang scored the game winner in that game, in Game 6 yesterday, and Matt Murray stood on his head all playoffs, and Phil Kessel was the top producing forward.
Honestly,
one of those guys deserve it.
Honestly, I don't think he was standing on his head that much, though. I think when you look at how great Pittsburgh is playing defensively, they only allowed 2 shots in the third period of Game 6 when
who would you
the San
credit
Jose
for?
Sharks had to score a goal.
You would credit Chris Letang for a lot of that. He leads that court.
I would look at him more of as an offensive threat than defensive, but I mean, honestly, I can understand why Sidney Crosby was picked, and I kind of agree with you in the sense that the league probably picked him because, hey, he's a recognizable name, and maybe it'll give more recognition to him. I don't know, but like at the end of the day, I did still have Matt Murray as my number 1.
I should have looked this up before. I didn't, but I'm curious. If anyone has ever been named the MVP, a forward, if they've ever been named MVP without scoring a goal in a series. Now, the sport's become very analytic driven. There's a lot more information now. Goals are not everything, but goals are how you win. And I think you have to be involved with that offense a little bit more than Sidney Crosby does. I think you need to produce a little bit more. And yeah, I'm mad. I think you could have made the case for any of the other 3, Letang, Murray, or Kessel. I think that Crosby was the wrong call.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning into the Fanalist Podcast. I'm Tyson, and you can follow us at TheFanalystPod.
Well, I guess the thing is when you win the Stanley Cup, there's a huge celebration that comes afterwards. So I got a quick question for you guys. Let's have a little bit of a discussion here, okay? When you see a team celebrating a win like this, kind of gets me thinking. If you could sit in any dressing room, in any circumstance, what would it be? And my examples, like an example for this would be, the Golden State Warriors when they were down 3-1 against OKC. Wouldn't it have been interesting to sit in on that, sit in the locker room and see how everyone was reacting, who was taking control and motivating the team, who was doing that. Or the Blue Jays when they clinched the AL final, when they made it to the AL final. I would have loved to see what the team was like, but also it's kind of easier when you pick a team when they're celebrating something. So how about a football team when they're down 2 touchdowns at halftime and they get one of those, Hollywood motivation speeches? What would be like the ultimate dressing room conversation for you to get to sit on?
One that really comes to mind isn't necessarily a win or, one that like they came back after a bad loss. It was just one that was such an iconic meltdown when the Boston Red Sox lost to the New York Mets in Game 6 of the 1986 World Series, when Bill Buckner had that ground ball, the easy, soft ground ball to first base go right between his legs and end up costing them the game. And when ended up losing Game 7 of the World Series, being in the locker room after something like that to me would be just something to witness. Just even if it was just pure silence, just being there, witnessing it to me would mean more than a huge victory for the Toronto Blue Jays. Obviously, that would be amazing too, but I would love to be in there and see how everyone reacted after that. And also another one would be after Steve Bartman when the Chicago Cubs played the Miami Marlins. When the fly ball to left field, an easy fly out, was interfered by Steve and ended up being the scapegoat, I guess you could say, to one of the biggest collapses in MLB history. Being in the locker room after an event like that, when the whole stadium was losing their minds, the whole city, that to me would be pretty special to be in that locker room or something like that.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Either being in the clubhouse during the whole Buckner debacle would have been pretty interesting, or being anywhere in the stadium during the Bartman incident would have been quite the sight to see. But I think I have to go with probably one of my favorite franchises. The team that I follow the closest is the Toronto Blue Jays. So this past postseason, during that game against Texas where Batista ended with the bat flip, I would like to just be in that clubhouse, not at the clubhouse, I would love to be in that dugout during that entire 7th inning as everything transpired. From all the errors by Elvis Andrus to even, that return back, when Russell Martin threw that pitch back and it went off the batter. I feel like those would have been some pretty hectic moments on the bench. A lot of emotion going high for some of those players. I feel like that would have been quite the situation to be sitting in on.
For me, it would have to be the 1997 NBA Finals between Chicago Bulls and Utah Jazz, or as some people know it as, the Michael Jordan flu game. Now, Michael Jordan played through a pretty bad flu where he got food poisoning the night before from some bad pizza he ate. Everyone said he wouldn't be able to play the next day. He said, no, I'm playing. This is the finals. I just got to suck it up. And he ended up going out there and dropping 38 on Karl Malone in the Utah Jazz. To me, being in that locker room at halftime, just seeing what the expressions on his teammates' faces, what they're talking to him about, what they're asking him, are you okay? Are you going to quit now? Like, you already did enough. You've already dropped 17 points, which is still great for a guy that's sick out of his mind. So I would definitely want to be in that situation and just sit there and watch how his teammates try to pick him up. And after the game, there's like an iconic video where his teammate, I think it was Dennis Rodman, or I might be wrong, but he's holding Michael up from falling because Michael, he can't do it anymore. He can barely stand. So for me, it'd have to be the NBA Finals 1997 Chicago Bulls versus Utah Jazz, Game 5.
Now, I like the throwbacks from you two. I went for something a little bit more recent. You guys dipped back in history before you were even born. So, I mean, I think you would have loved to just been alive to watch that live in general. But certainly some great moments in sports that would have been fantastic to, be sitting in on in stadium, in the change room, whatever it may be. Fanalists, we want to hear from you as well. Let us know what you think. Maybe there's a specific football game you remember. Maybe there's a Super Bowl. Maybe there's just a regular season game in OHL hockey or something. Maybe there's just a moment that really stuck out to you that you wish you could have been a part of, whether it was in a clubhouse, in a change room, or even just sitting on the bench while something transpired. Whatever that is, let us know in the comment section below.
Thanks for tuning in to the Fanalist Podcast. I'm Jayden, and you can follow us at TheFanalystPod.
Now, NBA Finals is going to be tonight. By the time this podcast gets uploaded, odds are you're going to be listening to this after the game. So we're not going to talk too much about the game, but we definitely have some opinions on the Draymond Green suspension. Jayden, tell me what your hot take is on the suspension.
I want to hear this.
It's absolutely ridiculous. I cannot believe that Draymond Green is suspended for Game 5 and LeBron only got a technical, and he's not suspended. It's just absolutely ridiculous. LeBron is the one that knocked him down in the first place, and Green takes a swipe at him. I don't even think that he was going for his private parts, but just takes a swipe at him, and they get together, and he gets a flagrant for that. The NBA has become so soft. It's ridiculous. This is why This is why I like the old school NBA, with the old Pistons, the '80s Pistons, where you can. If the guy's going to the basket, you can knock him down. It wouldn't be a flagrant foul. That's how the game's played. Take it to the bucket, get fouled.
I agree with you with that it needs to go back to the old school days when there were when it was more physical and there was less flopping.
It never will, but I digress.
Oh, obviously. But how many private parts has Green hit in the playoffs so far?
Exactly. If he hadn't done that already in the postseason, what he did to Steven Adams, I think twice.
Yeah, twice.
Eventually you have to do something if you're the NBA, right?
Then why not?
And he's hit Kyrie's as well.
Then why not go after LeBron James, their poster child for the NBA?
Because LeBron hasn't had a history this playoffs for
he's a first-time offender.
Exactly.
Right? He's a first-time doing something like that.
According to who, though? The NBA or the fans that can clearly see that LeBron flops every single time? Why hasn't he got suspended for flopping? Tell me that. Why hasn't he got suspended for flopping?
Because first of all, I would say a kick to the balls is worse than a flop. However, you can definitely give fines for someone who flops. I don't think he's done it as aggressively as you'd like to exaggerate, but He
hasn't. What?
No. Trust me. I agree with you that he has flopped, but is it as bad as Draymond's flagrant fouls? Because let's be honest, he was one away from getting suspended anyway. He didn't get suspended in that game. The NBA reviewed it, and they said, you know what? This guy needs to be taught a lesson because, let's be honest, he's been hitting balls. He's been hit balls, son. So at the end of the day, you have to say, all right, Draymond, like Andrew said, had he not hit those balls before, none of this would be a problem. He wouldn't have gone suspended.
That if you are suspending Draymond Green for hitting someone in the balls, then you have to suspend LeBron James for flopping.
You cannot suspend LeBron James for flopping in a final. A flop is like...
But Draymond Green didn't even hit him in the balls. That's the thing. He didn't.
He didn't. All right.
He missed.
He took a swipe at his crotch, which was obvious because this is how Draymond Green, this is just what he does. He shoots his leg up when he shoots and tries to catch guys in the shins or in the hips. It's something that he does. You can't keep getting away with doing this. At some point, the NBA has to take some sort of control. Now, say what you want about LeBron James. Maybe LeBron James should be getting a little bit more punishment for things. Definitely back in that Raptors series, I was much more frustrated seeing, him flopping. This series, he's done less. But he's still, he's playing an old school type of basketball that, you used to get those fouls all the time when you flopped. Now, he's had some ridiculous ones. I know. I get it. But for Draymond Green, let's look just at Draymond Green. When you know that you're that close to being able to be kicked out of the NBA Finals, why would you even give them a reason to consider it?
Okay, let me just say this. I understand that they want to teach Draymond Green a lesson. But right now, in one of the most biggest games that they're going back to Oracle to play the championship game and not even let him into the arena, and let me just go back to this whole ordeal that happened. What started it was LeBron James setting an illegal pick in my mind. And then Draymond Green not liking it, taking a swipe at him, and then LeBron James stepped over him first. I honestly can't believe that the refs did not see something like they didn't say anything about that, or the league saying something about that, saying listen, you can't do that. It's disrespectful. It's etiquette. It's players' etiquette. You can't do that. Now, don't get me wrong. I get that Draymond Green's going to get suspended just because of his past history, this playoffs, and even before that, people just don't like him as a dirty player. But right now, you could possibly be changing the whole outcome of this series based on a swipe that he missed.
Yeah, but that's the thing. It's all about intent. And from what we've seen before, it looked as though his intent was to hit LeBron. And I agree with you with the fact that LeBron stepping over him was major disrespect and maybe a fine, but you can't suspend him for that. I mean,
it's some type of embellishment, of course. There's something there, but you can't have it both ways. I wish the NBA accepted a little bit more contact. They let the players kind of express themselves a little more physically, but then you don't want them stepping over somebody who's lying on the ground. He didn't step on him. He stepped over him. Yes, it's disrespectful. Yes, it's wrong. Jose Batista's bat flip was disrespectful to the Texas Rangers. Who cares? Who cares about the Texas Rangers? It was, it's part of play. Now, yeah, it's not like LeBron just hit a 20-pointer and something special happened. Like, it wasn't a game-winning buzzer beater and he stepped over him. But he stepped over him. I don't think that's that big of a deal. It's disrespectful. If you want to get even with LeBron for disrespecting him, go dunk on him the next time.
Well, there might not be a next time this season if the Warriors win. But what I'm saying is that I guess I'm just tired of LeBron getting away with so many things that the refs aren't doing anything about.
But LeBron doesn't get any calls, dude. Didn't you hear Tyronn Lue? LeBron doesn't get any calls.
Yeah, from some rookie coach, some bum who got crossed up by Allen Iverson. That's what he's known for in the NBA.
I can't believe
that is what he's known for in the NBA, for nothing else.
I can't believe they keep bringing that up, though.
Because that's the only thing that he's known for, is getting crossed up by Allen Iverson.
Yeah, but he's a coach now. A coach is a coach. Who cares what you did?
Okay, but you can't say that he never gets any calls. That's another issue that I don't know if we're going to talk about, but that irritates me to the unbelievable extent. I can't believe that you just said that LeBron does not get any calls.
LeBron, he does flop. It's obvious, but a lot of other players do as well, and some a lot more often than he does. So you can't punish LeBron without punishing the other players. That's just the bottom line.
But he whines a lot more
yeah,
as well.
I mean, that's just him. Sidney Crosby whines as well, but you're not going to give him a penalty for whining.
This isn't going to be popular by any means. This will not be popular. But here's what happens, right? When they're discussing what they do with Draymond Green, there's a bunch of suits sitting in a room debating, whether we suspend him for a game or not, give him the flagrant to put him over his limit. They're sitting there discussing it. Here's what nobody says. Nobody says, hey, let's take Draymond Green out and extend this series so we can make more money. Nobody says that, but each one of them is thinking it. And
absolutely.
Each one of them's thinking it. And if they want to extend this series, if that was the sole reason they did this, I would have a problem with it. If this was the first time Draymond Green had ever done something, if Draymond Green was, the innocent guy of the NBA, he's just there to, draw his fouls and make his shots, and that's all he ever did, and then the one time he took a swipe at somebody like that, they called it, I would totally have your side. I would totally be like, this is absurd, that you cannot take a player. You want to let the teams decide who's going to win the championship. You don't want to have this type of effect on the outcome. But if you're somebody who's already under the microscope,
a frequent offender.
Yeah, Draymond Green knew better. There's no excuse for it. I think what Draymond Green wishes is if he knew he was going to get a flagrant, I think he would have rather punched LeBron James in the face.
I can agree with that. It's just that they just need some consistency with the refs. The refs have.
That's the NBA right now. That's for sure a huge issue in the NBA that they can't fix because every official calls the NBA different. All of them. But the NBA is also the hardest sport to probably referee because there's so many things happening in each play and there's so many plays happening every minute.
Yeah, and that's something we can agree on. We can agree to disagree on the other things, but I can agree on that it is very hard to ref. Like, the refs are always under the microscope, and don't get me wrong, I have a lot of respect for refs. When I played, I would always be nice to them and everything, not to just kiss their ass or anything, just to I treat them like humans. But when you have so many either missed calls or say you have one missed call, a lot of missed calls of game one.
People get frustrated, yeah.
And then you're nitpicking every single call of game two. You just need consistency throughout the series. That's all people ask for is consistency. And the NBA just hasn't gotten it lately.
Yeah, well, I mean, we were making the point about Tyronn Lue saying that LeBron doesn't get any calls. I don't necessarily agree with that. I brought that up out of, a bit of sarcasm. I hope our listeners were able to understand that. It was sarcasm. LeBron James could definitely use a few more foul calls for some of the things he does. But, what it comes down to with this finals right now, it's Draymond Green has been suspended for the next game for tonight, for Monday, June the 13th. He's been suspended. and I think it's the right decision. I think you have to do it at this point. And, what's he going to do when he comes back the next game? If he does it again, do you just suspend him again?
You fine him.
There won't be a next game.
Oh, we'll see about that. Well, let's just say this. If they win tonight, will there be a Game 7?
No.
All right. We'll see about that.
I think Golden State finds a way to shut this one out at some point. Today, maybe we haven't seen this. Green has played every single game this season.
And he's been a big factor of this series.
All the way through, yeah.
He's gotten so many rebounds, and he's been a major problem for defensively for the Cavs. And I just want to say this, though. With him out, this is the time for LeBron James and the Cavaliers to step up and win in Golden State. And I believe if they do, they'll force a Game 7.
Well, this is funny. This is the first time I've ever heard you say something good about the Warriors. I'm kind of tearing up here.
They're an amazing team. I've never said anything that bad. All right. I've never said anything negative against the Warriors when it comes to the talent of the team and their ability to win games. I just believe that the Cleveland Cavaliers now have an opportunity to step up. And the way they performed in Game 3 and in Game 4, not late in the fourth quarter, but for both those games, they looked like a completely different team than Game 1 and 2. And I think if they bring that to Golden State without Draymond Green, it's a whole nother story.
A door is opened up for the Cleveland Cavaliers. We'll see if they're able to take advantage of that. We'll certainly be talking more about this series if it extends or if it ends later on in the Fanalist Podcast this week. So make sure you stay tuned for that. Thanks for tuning into the Fanalist Podcast. I'm Andrew, and you can follow us at TheFanalystPod. Rob Gronkowski of the New England Patriots. He's sitting out of the majority of OTAs, training camp, probably preseason as well. Tyson, do you have a problem with, the all-star tight end of the New England Patriots just deciding, this year, I'm not going to let the injuries get a hold of me early. I'm going to sit out. And this isn't his decision, of course. This is coaching decision as well. Management is in on this. We want Rob Gronkowski for the entire 16 games and the playoffs because every year this organization's goal is to win a Super Bowl. Tyson, do you think it's the right call to just let him, sit out and just follow along on paper?
Yeah, absolutely. I have 100% no problem with it. Rob Gronkowski, there's no secret. He's been injured so many times. You can't risk it. Why risk having an all-star tight end, in my opinion, the best in the league, maybe one of the best in the history of the NFL? Why risk him getting injured in a meaningless preseason game where, you got Martellus Bennett there if you want to run the right routes? Get another all-star caliber tight end to do the work for Tom Brady or whoever they're having in as the backup quarterback for the preseason games. It just doesn't make any sense for him to play in them.
I couldn't agree more. I'm surprised, not really surprised. I'm impressed that you remembered that Martellus Bennett is now a New England Patriot. Being a Chicago Bears fan, I'm sure you were trying to put that whole transaction just way out of your mind. You probably still have some anger, and I can see you slightly, biting down on your teeth, which is no problem.
Still hits home.
Oh, of course. But, having Martellus Bennett around, it's not like you have a quarterback sitting out and you have no one to throw the ball in practice. Gronkowski's going to sit out. He can come back. He is a proven player, and he can go into any situation. Look how many times he comes back from injury. Just pretend like you're injured right now. Heck, maybe he is. That's what some talk is. Maybe there's something that's not right, and they're waiting for him to be 100%. And if that's the case, I couldn't agree more. Rob Gronkowski is, in peak physical form all year long. There's no problem here. But a lot of people are just not okay with it. They're saying Gronk should be part of this, part of that. I don't agree with those people at all. I think with other positions, it's more important. When you see a guy, let's say someone like Drew Brees, okay, an older quarterback who, has had a great career in the NFL, and he doesn't really have any signs that he's going to let up. Maybe a better example would be Ben Roethlisberger, but we can get to that afterwards. But let's say Drew Brees. If you know the New Orleans Saints are going to take a little bit longer to finally figure things out, do you tell Drew Brees, hey, take it easy, let's put you in there during the season, and then if we're out of it, we'll rest you and only play a few games a year. Maybe we can extend your career a few years and give our team a little bit of a chance to get better. Do you think they should be better using the rest opportunities in the sport?
I don't believe that necessarily. I think when it comes to the NFL, because there's so few games, you can't afford to rest a guy and have an off have an off week just because you want to make sure he's ready to go for a tougher game. In the NFL, if you lose 3 in a row, then you're pretty much you're in a horrible spot. So, and when it comes to an older player, I think you can give more leverage to him just because he's proven himself. When he comes to a guy like Drew Brees, for example, I mean, this guy has been one of the best quarterbacks of all time, one of the best quarterbacks still today. I wouldn't have a problem with him not or resting for the preseason. What does matter to me though is rookies, young players who need to practice in the preseason. They need to get those reps in, and guys who haven't proven themselves in the NFL. They're the ones who I'm most concerned about when it comes to they don't need rest.
You need to understand the system. So you need to be out there in preseason, engaged in every activity possible to make sure you know that offense or defense from front to back. You need to be able to do anything. But, you do have these special cases where, running backs, for instance. Running backs are, so valuable in the NFL because none of them seem to last very long, right? So a guy like Adrian Peterson or Le'Veon Bell, guys who have had problems here and there, I think that it would be wise for teams to rest these guys completely. I mean, yeah, let them come to training camp. They're going to do their normal gym work, but you don't need to give them the extra hours and hours every day of extra work. All you're doing is taking years off their potential. And if you have a guy signed to long term, I want their potential to be as spread out and as long as possible, right? You never want a guy to be, ready to retire when there's 2 years left on his deal and you got a bunch of money for him.
Especially in the NFL when guys, we're seeing it more often than not, retiring extremely young. We're seeing guys in their early 20s say, you know what, I don't need the brain damage. I don't need the injuries to my body that will, it's fine now getting all the money, but in the long run, I'm going to have a pretty short life.
I think a great example would be in the MLB, a guy like David Ortiz. You see him, he's just a DH right now. He's not getting out on the field. He's not playing. And as a DH, he's hitting historically great for his age. Like, he is having no problem getting some pop off that bat, hitting home runs, hitting doubles. I mean, it doesn't even matter how slow he is at this point. Not that he's that slow. He's not Pablo Sandoval. But I mean, just having, by only DHing, it shows like if he didn't want to retire this year, I wouldn't have a problem having Ortiz for another 2 or 3 seasons. I think he could still actually, have some value.
That to me is really the only sport where I can say rest him, put him in a position where he doesn't have to do all the heavy lifting. When you have sports like the NFL or the NHL or sports that require physical contact and sports that require, I guess, more physical.
NHL, NFL are
right.
Probably 2 of the best examples. NBA, still, you got to learn to work with contact and run schemes.
Exactly, and NBA, you're running up and down the court like it's nothing all game long. When in the MLB, you don't have to necessarily run all the. I mean, unless you're in the outfield and unless you're stealing bases, but for the most part, you're just standing in one position and not having to perform the same type of physical activities as you would see in the other sports.
Make sure you follow us on Twitter at TheFanalystPod, subscribe to our channel on YouTube, and like our page on Facebook. The Toronto Blue Jays are now 16-7 in their last 23 games, guys. Now that the roof is open in Rogers Center, looks like those home runs are coming a little bit easier. Do you think this is the part of the season where things turn around for the Blue Jays and they just take off from here?
Oh, absolutely. Encarnacion has already shown that he's hit, 3 or 4 home runs in the past 2 or 3 games?
3 in the last 2 games, yeah.
Yeah, it's ridiculous what he's doing right now. He's the man right now. He's the man that needs to drive this ship to the playoffs right now, and I think this is the time where they get hot.
Now, I wouldn't say he's he has. He's just had 2 very good games. His average is up. The guys are all hitting really well right now. If you look at the last week, Saunders, Pilar, Donaldson, Edwin, and Batista are all performing. And, including Saunders there, him and those big 3 are kind of the 3 bats you really need, acting right now for you. They're the guys you need performing. Jose Batista, he's back tonight. He's going to be in the order against Philadelphia. And this whole week, lots of winnable games. They're up against a lot of really crummy pitchers. If I had to if I have a hot take for you, it's that I think the Toronto Blue Jays are going to average 7.5 runs over the next week.
That's very realistic, just because of the way that they've been playing lately. And honestly, if you can get Devin Travis going, because he's still rusty from his injury, and he hasn't played since early last year. If you can get him going like he did against the Orioles the other day, you can get him going. If you can get Carrera going, if you can get him on base, get a really good base runner out there, get some stolen bases off some less than average catchers, then you definitely have a shot to score more than 6 or 7 runs a game.
Well, Carrera's been phenomenal for the Blue Jays so far this season. Definitely one of the top performers, kind of a breakout player, kind of like Chris Colabello was last season. Hopefully things don't end for Carrera. Yeah, hopefully things don't end for Carrera the way they did for Chris Colabello. But yeah, Carrera, I think he's been averaging like 330 over the last month, something ridiculous like that. He's getting on base. He's doing all those things right. And him and Saunders, they're both playing better than Jose Bautista right now. And it's not by a little bit. It's by a lot. They've both been outperforming him by quite a lot. And I think that just goes to show, the Blue Jays are only 2.5 games back behind Boston right now. And, if these guys are all coming around and they have a huge week here, we could be looking at the AL East leaders in about 2 weeks from now, maybe even shorter than that. And to help the team out, because there's still a lot of, there's a lot of problems with the relievers, with the whole relieving core right now. But the Blue Jays just announced they're bringing up a left-handed pitcher, Scott Diamond, who's never actually pitched in relief before. But I mean, hey, give him a shot. We need some lefties in that pen. I think it could be one of those turning points for the Blue Jays right now, as we come into June and July. At shaking up the lineup for sure. There's some real shaking up of the lineup right now. Encarnacion's off today, but I believe the batting order is Bautista, Donaldson, Saunders, Smoke, something ridiculous like that. Definitely not the 3-4 batters you're used to when you play against the Blue Jays, but nonetheless, lots of guys, lots of power, and it's just going to be going up from here, I believe.
The turnaround definitely starts tonight with Bautista back in the lineup especially with this series with the Phillies and then the Orioles. You got to get his confidence back up, get him hitting some dingers, or at least start him off with some base hits, some easy singles to center or something like that, just to get his confidence back up so he can start hitting some dingers like we're used to seeing him do.
Yeah, I'm really glad that the Blue Jays actually looked inside the organization to try and solve this reliever issue with Scott Diamond. I don't think that the Blue Jays really have much to offer on the market right now when it comes up to the trade deadline. Their prospect pool is pretty thin, and a lot of the guys that you have in the lineup you need. I don't think they're quite ready to go and trade Edwin or Bautista if they believe that one of those contract opportunities to extend have already slipped by. I don't really think that there's much of an opportunity for that because Edwin, he's mainly a DH, and anywhere that you're going to send him is going to be in the American League, and he's going to go to a contender. I don't think you want Edwin going against you in the playoffs. I think you want him on your side. So definitely, he's not very valuable right now. He's going to hurt you more than he's going to help you. Jose Bautista, he's had a couple injury problems. I don't know what you're actually going to get in return for him for a season rental. And again, you do not want to be facing Bautista in a conference or, World Series final. Because he will hurt you. We see Bautista's track record against pitchers that have pitched at him, against other players that have gotten in his face and caused problems. I think he's going to continue to do that against the Rangers and also teams like the Royals. I think that Bautista is just going to continue to shred against them, and I just don't see many options for this team at the trade deadline.
No, I completely agree with that. I think that this is a playoff team, what they have right now, and if they can keep up with their amazing offense right now, and continue with their defensive play right now, I think that they will be a strong contender in the AL in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think that's something really surprising that I don't think many people have thought about is how Aaron Sanchez has really joined the starting rotation and performed really, really well. But kind of a negative to that is that they haven't had him in the pen. And they haven't had his strong reliever presence who can come out and pitch a couple innings. They don't have that right now. Let's hope Scott Diamond can do that. With the Twins, he wasn't fantastic. He definitely, things didn't end well. There's a reason he's in the minors. But if he can join the team back, pitch all right, maybe this team can figure things out and put together a bit of a run here and get a little bit closer to my season projection. I had this team winning 95 games at the beginning of the season. And, it's probably safe to drop that by a few, but I don't care. I think the Blue Jays are going to, be well over 500. I think they're going to compete, and I think they're for sure a playoff team.
Yeah, especially with Jason Gurley finally is out of the pen now in his recent trade, coming over to the Blue Jays. I think that if they do get They just need that one extra piece or one or two extra pieces in the bullpen, because right now, with their starters doing fantastic and the roof's now open, so R.A. Dickey his knuckleball will be just dancing in there. I think that they need one or two more pieces in the bullpen to make them a really championship contending team. But that addition of Jason Grilli, I think that was a great pickup.
The offense is coming back to do what we expect from them. The starting rotation is better than we could have ever imagined at the beginning of the season, and maybe, just maybe, the bullpen is going to get back into some peak performance times like we saw last year, where everything was working and operating on all cylinders.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning into the Fanalist Podcast. I'm Tyson, and you can follow us at TheFanalystPod.
We're going to get to more of this later in the week for sure. A big tournament this weekend is the US Open, the PGA. Tyson, what do you think about the course Oakmont? They call it maybe the most difficult course in the world. And do you enjoy seeing the world's best winning a tournament where you shoot 5 over?
That, to me, is the US Open. That's why I want to watch. I want to see the most difficult test thrown at them. I'm watching Ricky Fowler's Snapchat right now. He's throwing balls into the rough. You can't even see them. I love that. For some reason, that's what I want to see when it comes to this tournament. You know, I hate seeing 15 under, 20 under after every tournament, and it's getting to be that way in the majors too. I mean, the Masters has played tough, I guess, over the last few years, but when you look at the British Open, they expect like the weather and the links style golf course to take over rather than the course conditions that the USGA or the RNA in that case to play into a factor. And sometimes it works, but most of the time, I mean, look at St. Andrews, you'll see scores of like 20 under. And PGA, it's kind of a curveball. Sometimes you get years where it's low scoring. Sometimes you get years where it's high scoring. With the US Open, it's 100% high scoring.
It's consistently difficult, and you can't argue that. Some players don't like it, and to those players, I say, get over yourself. You can't go out there every game or every weekend and shoot 10 under, 20 under. It's interesting for sure. I love watching, players get eagles and stuff like that. It's always entertaining, but there's something special about when you see these guys, putting together a 74 and it's a good round. That one guy who shoots the 95 or the 100, and you think for a second, maybe I could shoot 95 or 100, maybe I could compete with them on this course. And I mean, you'd be completely wrong, because Oakmont, the type of accuracy you need at Oakmont is it's ferociously difficult. As you were saying with Ricky Fowler's Snapchat, the ball just disappears in the rough. The fairways are thin. You have to hit it straight down the middle. And on some of these holes, if you miss that center strip, your ball's just going to roll into the rough. It can be really tough pick'ems for people at Oakmont, and that's without water. It's all sand and bunkers.
Yeah, and the bunkers, you mentioned them. There are a lot of church pew bunkers where if you drive it in there, you're going to have a really crazy lie or a tough angle at the pin. And the greens, they're not easy in any sense of the imagination either. They're always tough at the US Open. The USGA makes it as fast as possible, as dry as possibly can be. At Oakmont in 2007, greens were a huge issue. The rough was a huge issue. This final score ended up being 5 over par. Ano Cabrera somehow is able to win his first major championship then. But that's what I love about the US Open at the end of the day. That's why it's one of my favorite majors.
The stimp meter is out, and definitely that putting surface is going to be the cause of a lot of discussion over the next week. We will get more to the U.S. Open later in the week, talk about some players we think, it's time for them to step up in the U.S. Open. Maybe we'll talk about if we think Jordan Spieth's going to repeat. Maybe we'll talk about if Dustin Johnson can, get over some demons at the U.S. Open. We'll get to that eventually. Also taking place this week is another MMA event with the UFC. We're not at UFC 200 quite yet. I was, just thinking about it recently. I felt like it was a lot closer because there's just so much talk about UFC 200, Tyson. There's so much stuff taking place, a lot of discussion. Why don't you tell our listeners, those who maybe don't follow the UFC so closely, they're following some of the other sports, they've been stuck in the NHL and NBA playoffs. What do they have to look forward to with UFC 200 and Brock Lesnar, who's going to be representing Canada at that event?
It's going to be an amazing week, and every year in July, the UFC puts together an international fight week where they're amazing events for the fans. outside of the octagon and then inside of the octagon. There's 5 title fights that entire week. It's incredible. And 200 is obviously the one that everybody's focusing on. And yeah, they announced at UFC 199 that Brock Lesnar will be fighting at 200. And they did it in this unbelievable way that nobody was expecting. And that just adds to the excitement of the event. You know, when they had McGregor pulled from the card, it was like, well, yeah, Jones and Cormier is a good replacement, but it isn't a great replacement. It doesn't have that same it factor. With Brock Lesnar being the former superstar that for the UFC, having him as the main pay-per-view king back in 2009, 2010, 2011 when he last fought, it's huge. It's absolutely huge. And you're right, he's representing Canada. I thought that was a little bit of a surprise, but he's lived there for many years in Saskatchewan, has a ranch out there. He's very much a person that doesn't like to be involved in the city. He says that doesn't focus on social media whatsoever, so he doesn't really know about Mark Hunt, the guy he's fighting against. It's a tough matchup for him, but at the end of the day, it's what drives viewership. People want to see him return, and that's what we're going to get.
That and a lot more great UFC conversation will be coming up later this week on the Fanalist Podcast. So make sure you follow us on Twitter at TheFanalystPod, subscribe to our channel on YouTube, and like our page on Facebook.